All right, so welcome. I'm going to minimize my own view of myself so that people don't have to stare at me both in person in the room and on the screen. Let's see if we can just make that smaller. So thank you very much for those of you that are here online. I'm also going to be shrinking the chat box, but we will be checking in on chat a few times. So thank you very much for coming to this session on the FOLIO roadmap and prioritization update. So I am here with Caitlin Stewart, and we're going to give you an update on the FOLIO roadmap. And I would also like to thank Jesse Konecki, who served with me on the roadmap group for many years and has turned it over to the product council. I am not on the product council, so I am turning this over to the product council as well. And I also would really like to thank Jen Colt. I don't know if she's here in the room, but she really helped us set up a lot of the dashboards and other information that you'll see here today. So we'll spend about half the time kind of looking at the roadmap and what the product council has been putting together. And then Caitlin's going to share the community prioritization process that's been underway with the SIGs that many people are probably somewhat familiar with, but if you're not, this is a chance to learn more. All right, so let's go. Next slide. Okay. So what this roadmap is that we started a few years ago in the product council, it's an 18-month roadmap. And what we're going to show today is under the roadmap kind of the teams that are responsible for developing FOLIO and some high-level functional areas. And then we'll also show you where we put together some dashboards on JIRA so that you can look at these things yourself. And then we'll turn it over to the community prioritization process. So we had a working group, which ended last year, and then we turned it over to the product council to keep it up after that. And we developed this 18-month roadmap. So what is 18 months? So when we worked on this, say, last year, we had a little different set of where the timeline for the releases was. We had Sunflower that was coming out in April, Trillium was supposed to come out in November, Umbrella Leaf, then again in April, and then Vetch in November. And behind all of that, we have what we have affectionately called a cone of uncertainty. Some of you who have seen this previously might have even remember we had cone of uncertainty hats, which we do not now. But we kind of are in a different situation where I'm trying some animations here. So I tested them out on my computer at home. We'll see how they work. So, well, Sunflower got delayed by a month. So that's not a big deal, you know, some delays. Trillium, well, Trillium is delayed. We think it's coming out in March, but you probably saw an announcement about this, that release date is not set yet. And some of the reasons for that were just to make sure that everything works properly. And so that there is a release management stakeholders groups that works with Oleski Petrenko, who's the release manager, and you know, considers what to do with things and where we want to go from there. So this is kind of hot off the presses, but it's a big change. Umbrella Leaf, I don't know. That's kind of a big question mark. Obviously, it's not going to come out in April because that's not going to be a very useful release. Vetch, it's kind of off the table in an 18-month calendar at this point in time. So it is sort of a different situation that we find ourselves in. And I think as the product matures and as we work through these different scenarios and where we go with community-driven development, with the Eureka implementation, those are all things that are going to impact what we choose to do. Now, if you are interested in seeing more about the releases, I tried to open up all of these tabs at the top, and now I need to move this Zoom screen out of the way. So you can go to the wiki, and I'm going to just need to scoot this control again out of the way, and you can see the releases home. And so if you want more information about a particular timeline, this is also a chance where you can look and you can see information. So you can see here our Trillium release, which is delayed, but you may be interested in looking, you know, at all of these different milestones for the release. You can also get a sense of the timeline, and this timeline is interesting too because not all these different releases, their timelines overlap. So when is the scope of, say, Umbrella Leaf? Well, technically we've kind of already passed that, but given that everything's getting delayed, that might not be accurate. For people that are working on the councils, you can also see that we're looking at doing like the module review process. And so the technical council does a technical evaluation of new modules. And so that has a deadline in here. So this is a really useful page for people to look at. And, you know, things do change. And so we kind of have to deal with that. So I'm going to go back to the slideshow. So I also just, all right, me and this computer are learning how to work together. So I also just put this kind of in here as its own slide, because if you're looking at the slides later on, the animations make it illegible. So it was fun to do during the presentation though. Okay, let's move forward, please. Oh, we got to do the animations again. Okay, let's get out of there. All right. So then a couple of other information about like who works on FOLIO. So these are some of the different teams. There's a lot of teams that work on FOLIO. And you probably know some of them from your work with the SIGs, or maybe you're new to FOLIO and you don't know these things. But we have a lot of EPAM teams, Spitfire, Thunderbird, Firejet, FoliJet, Vega, that are really doing, I think, what you might think of as like core integrated library system functionality, also providing support for American consortia. Then we have ManVolk, which is knowledge integration and supported by GBV, which really is working a lot on ERM functionality, as well as serials management, which you know, interfaces with acquisitions clearly and with inventory. And then SIF, which is GBV and index data, is providing connections to like the Union catalog for German libraries, the consortial requirements, the Harvester, and there's some other groups from Germany, Odin, which is working on reminder fees, circulation add-ons, and then we have Leipzig, which is working on usage statistics, and open access app. And there's also a number of institutions that provide individuals and teams to work on different things. Some of these things have gotten a bit suspended, I guess you would say, with the change in the underlying architecture to Eureka, like workflows, as Texas A&M was really leading that. They had to suspend that a little bit. But there's a whole lot of ways that people are contributing developers, and people have been able to join teams when they're interested. So going back over to what you can learn on the wiki, there is a FOLIO development teams home. So if you are interested in any of the current status of teams, who the PO is, what areas they are working on, this is kept pretty current. This is a great resource to look at. And the other resource that I often use is this teams responsibility and modules matrix, which is very long, but is also usually very current. Let me just move this. First, I'm going to accept the cookies. Okay, and then there should be a way I can just like hide this sidebar. There it is. Okay, so this is a really great table. It has all of the modules in FOLIO, and there are a lot of modules. It indicates which team, who the product owner is, who the dev lead is. It also indicates for newer modules what release they are planning to come out for. So you can see what's been released in Ramsons and Quiznalia and Poppy, what is, I think, supposed to come up for Trillium. So this is a useful piece of information to, place that you can look at things, and that is linked to from the slide deck. So returning to the slideshow. So the product council has tried to compile this information and put it forward on the wiki. So now I'm going out of the slideshow again. Sorry, it's kind of bouncing up and down a little bit. All right, where? All right. Control Alt Shift H is going to hide this Zoom thing. All right, let's try it. All right, wait, I need one more key here. Yay! Okay, thank you so much. Okay. So if we need it back, do we hit that again? Control Alt Shift H. Oh, okay. All right. So you can see this is on the wiki. This is under the product council. I hid the sidebar just so we have a little more space, but you can find it also linked to from the front page of the wiki. So we do try to provide an 18-month outlook. And I will say this is a bit more of a reactive roadmap than a maybe a proactive part. And Caitlin will get to the more proactive part. So these functionalities that are listed here, this information came from the SIG reports. It came from looking what's in JIRA. It came from looking at the release notes and trying to pull out things that look important. It might not be like I might have missed some things. We might not have caught everything. Maybe there's some items that you think like, why didn't you list that? So if you want to see all of the gory details, we do have these different dashboards that Jen helped set up and that we have created for different areas in JIRA. So the dashboards are looking ahead to the next 2 releases. So first, we have some different filters. So you can see all of the UX prods, so all the features that are slated for Trillium. Now there's a lot more you can see here under acquisitions that are slated for Trillium than slated for Umbrella Leaf because Umbrella Leaf has not been fully scoped out yet. And then we also have this beautiful pie chart, which shows you the different modules that we're putting under this acquisitions umbrella. So, you know, we have a bunch of different areas coming out new with Trillium is the mod Mosaic, which provides integration with a new Mosaic ordering interface that's replacing Gobi and actually extends some things that were in mod Gobi and should make it a little more universally usable. And so, you know, we try to keep that list up to date too. And then we have some things for Umbrella Leaf, but it is just not as fully scoped out. So we do have these different areas. And if there are areas where you're like, you know what, I think the product council should be tracking this better. I'd like to see this information on the roadmap. We can add that too. Additionally, on this page, we have some of the new apps, which include, like I said, the mod Mosaic and then reading room. And then we have a few other dashboards here. So these are from the different release managers. So Sunflower, which is already out, but provides a nice just kind of example. So this is really put up by, not by the product council, but by the release manager. And it shows everything is done because it's been released. So that is great. And then you can take a look and, you know, you can see for Trillium, things are in a much more of a an active state. But there's also the links to the calendar. And so that was what I was showing you on that releases home there. And then lastly, on this page right now, we have miscellaneous dashboard. And so right now, this is what is unscheduled. So there's a lot of things that are in JIRA that have no release assigned to them. Maybe you're interested in seeing what those are. You can see these are just features, so UX prods. And it's a long list. It goes on 3,331 of them. So I know periodically in the acquisition SIG, for example, Dennis and Joe pull up things and are like, hey, do we still need this? Is this still accurate? Because we know that things get put in here and then FOLIO changes, life changes, and we move on. and maybe that the way that that feature was scoped no longer applies. So that's the information on the roadmap that I wanted to present, and I see I'm doing pretty well because I figured about 20 minutes. Now I'm going to turn it over to Caitlin. You absolutely can. So everything that the Library of Congress has for Folio is being contributed to the project, so it should include all of that.
I think it does. Yeah.
All right, so we are going to turn to the community priorities dashboard.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Let's see, before we dive into this, I do want to say that this is a new process and it's intended to be iterative. I want to say that because we really want your feedback. And as I'm talking, I would really like it if you could start thinking about what you need from this process and what you need for like your day-to-day purposes to understand, and let us know either in the discussion after I'm done speaking, or you can contact us via Slack if you think of things after this session. So the community priorities dashboard came out of some planning that the PC did at last year's WOLFcon. We did some goal setting and there were some key themes that emerged. Primary among them was a desire to help support some of the nascent prioritization efforts that individual SIGs were doing. We wanted to make sure that they had support and could take that somewhere, and also provide the infrastructure to extend some of that prioritization to other SIGs. Additionally, there were a lot of goals that kind of centered around wanting to surface gaps in the platform and communicate them better so that we have awareness of what they are and consensus on what they are. And also we have the opportunity to align resources to meet those needs. So we came out of this knowing that we needed some sort of a lightweight means of surfacing our community's highest priority needs. I want to clarify that just like the roadmap is reflective of development that is planned for the future, the priorities dashboard is reflective of our current needs. It doesn't guarantee development, but I do think that clearly articulating and prioritizing our needs is a necessary precursor to getting development done. So let's take a quick look. You're going to see a little snapshot of the dashboard here. Let's go see the document itself. I will put this link in the chat in a moment when I can find the chat. This is, well, here, let's escape. So for right, okay, I will escape.
Yeah, we should probably make sure there's no chat.
Yeah.
And then it was
Interlude. Okay, everybody seems good. I'm gonna copy. Okay. That's the dashboard, and now it's in chat. You can also find this linked on the PC homepage. If there are other places that you'd like to see it, where you think it would be helpful to kind of get this in front of people, let us know. That's part of the feedback that we're looking for here. So we've been developing this iteratively, like I mentioned before. So while we were in this initial period, we've had the goals pinned to the top to make sure that everyone's clear on what we're doing here. So just to run through those, we want SIGs to have a way to draw attention to their highest priority needs. We want to have insight into what other SIGs priorities are so that we can identify common ground, possible dependencies, and even conflicts. And we want to make sure that SIGs are getting the help that they need to make sure that their highest priority needs are development ready. We'll go into that a little bit more in a second. The PC needs to understand the community's highest priorities. We want to be able to identify gaps and trends and help facilitate connections of resources to those highest priority needs. Essentially, we can't do anything to align available resources to needs if we don't know exactly what those needs are. So this is our attempt to do that. We have a reach goal that we're going to talk about a little bit today. to also create a single rank list, the PC priorities list, which would include priorities from the dashboard, as well as potentially additional things that we think should be reflected in the priorities. One of the examples that came up was technical debt, how we're not going to get a full picture of everything that's needed in the platform just from the self-reporting of the individual SIGs. That's a reach goal for now, though. So in the wider community, not just in the SIGs, we want everyone to understand the areas that need additional attention. And we also want to create opportunities to coordinate on shared needs. And same issue as before. There are no opportunities to coordinate on shared needs if we haven't already articulated them. So we're creating a space for that by creating this dashboard. So today, I really want to focus on the concept and the structure and kind of get your feedback on that and prime you for some of the things that are going to be coming this fall. I do want to invite everyone to take a look at this dashboard. I think it's pretty cool. There are some things that emerge pretty immediately that were interesting to me. We asked the SIGs to self-identify their top 5 priorities. And this was very lightweight. I want to say thank you to all of the SIGs who responded to this so immediately. We've been really pleased with the level of engagement. So yeah, it shows the rows are different SIGs, and then their top 5 priorities are linked across the board. Some things that jumped out immediately were that the SIGs are in different places with this. Some SIGs have already been doing prioritization within their SIG for a year. Others just started. The conversation was started by this request. Regardless of where they were in talking to the SIGs, we know that this assignment, this ask to participate in our kind of first iteration of the dashboard started some really interesting conversations. And so that to me says we're on the right track. If this is starting some interesting conversations and surfacing some things that we might not have seen before. There are also some commonalities. There are shared topics that come up here. Item sorting, for example, comes up a couple of times on the dashboard. I think we can assume that some of the SIGs are not necessarily talking to each other about some of these high priority things. And by getting it all on one page, my hope is that they'll have opportunities to do that. We haven't gotten into identifying dependencies and potential conflicts as much, but that's something that I hope to see here too. In short, this creates an opportunity for us to leverage the power of this community, all these smart people who are working with this excellent platform to make this development work better, to get things into a better state so that they are shovel ready for when resources become available. I will say that now with my Library of Congress hat on and not my product council hat on, it was interesting to me because I saw a lot of shared needs for my team, so I thought, oh, this creates some points of potential coordination with other institutions to identify shared needs and potentially move on them. So we don't know exactly where this is going to go. We're looking for you for some feedback on opportunities you might see or what you'd like to see with it. So I'm going to attempt to go back to the deck. Oh, great. So just a quick note on how we got here. Back in April, we did a first iteration where we just asked SIGs to post their top 5 development needs to a Confluence page. This was intended to be kind of an MVP, first pass at it, very rough. And we did a review in May, did a little bit of refinement. But one of the interesting things was that it was clear that this kind of top 5 matrix was immediately valuable. The PC, like I mentioned before, does have a goal to make this kind of a 2-tiered dashboard that would include the top 5 matrix alongside a PC list. But we're still in the process of determining how that PC list would be generated, exactly what the mechanism would be for voting, the rubric, all that. I mean, you can appreciate there's a lot that we'll have to go into that. But we already have something here that's valuable. We also at that time identified a desire for greater integration with UX Prod. UX Prod is the source of truth in our community for development that's happening, right? So ideally, if we have a high priority need, it needs to be reflected in UX Prod. So we want to help SIGs do whatever they need to do to get those high priority needs into UX Prod early on. Over the summer, we've been building out the process. We started scheduling SIGs to come join the PC, and thank you to those of you who have already signed up, for 10 minutes at a time to just talk through their priorities. This was both to give us some additional context to what we saw on the dashboard, and it's like a new way to engage with them over the priorities. We've also formed a subgroup that started looking into the process for creating a single rate PC vote. Over the last month or so, we have met with the product owners as well and got some good feedback from them, and begin kind of crafting our timeline for what we hope will be the first, or not hope, will be the first production iteration of this dashboard. What does production mean in this situation? I think that the dashboard will still be a Confluence page and will still follow a similar call for updates. But I do hope to have a little bit more formal distribution. And I don't really know what that looks like yet. So same question. I want to know what would be helpful for you, how you would like this put in front of you so that you look at it when it is updated. A couple things that we learned. What was the keystroke? Control H. Control Alt Shift H. Yeah, we've talked about it a couple times. I think one of the greatest takeaways was that our MVP that we started with is useful on its own. Like just getting the different priorities collocated and articulated on one page showed us a lot. Having that extra context from the SIG really brought the priorities to life and allowed us to, I think, learn from SIGs in a way that we don't really get from our regular SIG reports. It was a different kind of engagement, and I think was very successful. We would like the dashboard to be more integrated with Jira, with UX Prod, but in talking to SIGs and product owners, we found that there's lots of variation in how people use UX Prod that makes it difficult to standardize into a single list. So I think that as we refine this process, there might be opportunities to standardize on some stuff too. If you have ideas, let me know. Another interesting piece of feedback here is we need a way to distinguish at-risk priorities, those things that are not scheduled, right, from those that are scheduled, that are already in flight, so that we can draw attention to them. So next steps on this, our goal is to update the dashboard and distribute it twice annually. Ideally, that would be synced with like the scope composition deadline for a release, but because the releases are shifting a lot, I think we need to go ahead and just get this on the calendar and start doing it. So right now we're planning to do a call for updates via this, via the SIG liaisons this fall, with the goal of publishing to the community in January. We're also going to shift our internal process. We used to have monthly reports from the SIGs. We're going to move that to quarterly reports and focus more on rolling priority discussions. We'll be sending out some communication about that after WOLFcon. And we're going to continue to refine this process. We invite your feedback. Some of the topics that we're still investigating include, single rank list. What could that look like? How are we going to do that? Options for integrating this process with existing tools. And yeah, I'm talking about Jira, but also the roadmap, also the release notes. Like, how do all these different artifacts link together to make something that is useful to all of you? Boy, you can tell I worked at this last minute. Ignore that third bullet point. Opportunities to leverage the dashboard to align to development resources. That was one of the original goals from WOLFcon last year when we did our PC goal setting exercise, was to create opportunities almost for matchmaking between institutions that might want to work together on a specific functionality. And we don't really know what that would look like. So same, if this is something that's interesting to you, we'd love to hear about it. Finally, there are so many interesting proposals happening in our community right now about what the community could be and how it could work differently. I'd be really interested if anybody has ideas for how community prioritization could fit into stuff like community development or any of the other proposals or any other feedback you have. So as we move into discussion, I wanted to leave you with this thought, which is we have a lot of useful artifacts here for communicating development. I think that the PC could have a role or should have a role in tracking and communicating development from the point of ideation to delivery. I don't think we're quite there yet. So if you have ideas about what would be useful to you to see for that, we'd love to hear them. So yeah, what information would be helpful to you in your day-to-day to understand the roadmap, the priorities, and how they fit together? What are you confused about? And how can we best close the loop? Yes.
So this is a question that's part procedural and I think part philosophical.
Okay.
It very much is in line with that very last book. I am imagining that the top 5 priorities for each SIG come with an expectation that by appearing on this list, these developments are more likely than the average to be actually be picked up and appear on the roadmap and develop, et cetera. Is it too early to say how well reality lines up with that expectation? It's not too early to say.
Can I interrupt you? Do we have a mic around that we can have you? So I'm going to make you repeat your question. And I'm sorry about that.
Imagine that I don't need the mic. I'm sure the online just fine.
For the people at home.
Hi, I will not be quite as loud now that I'm talking into the mic.
Introduce yourself too.
Vivian Gould Mobius.
Thank you.
My question is that I presume that the expectation is that the items that appear on the top 5 for each of the SIG come with an expectation that these developments are more likely to be picked up and actually appear on the roadmap and be developed, et cetera. The question is two-part. Is it too early to say how well reality lines up with that expectation? And if it's not too early to say, how well does reality line up with that expectation?
So I'll answer in 2 parts. The first is, I think that expectation is a good word that you use to describe what you're experiencing there. And I think it might not be the correct thing to apply to this. What we're reflecting is priority and need. By appearing on the roadmap, we are going to be able to draw PC attention to those resources. We can help surface high priority needs to institutions that might have funds to spend on them, but I don't think that it's necessary. I mean, there's still not a one-to-one correspondence with what's going to happen there. That said, one of the things that I think I'd like to try to figure out is how to visually represent which of the features on the dashboard are scheduled and which are not. When we talked to the POs, I think it was Thomas had the feedback that it'd be nice if there were owners, like if you could pick up something as an owner. And I think that there's more to talk about there. Yes, Stephen.
Before Stephen goes, and maybe you were going to mention this, but I know there is a group that's been working on community-driven development. And so I'm going to make a little plug for some sessions later in WOLFcon, and I'm looking at Jeremy Huff, who's been, I think, chairing that group. And I think one of the things that group is trying to do is to help surface things that can get picked up, but we also recognize if there is a funding provider or somebody who has development resources and they have a need, it may or may not be on that community priorities dashboard, and it still can get developed. And I think it might be good to think of that not so much as competing, but as complementing some of these other areas too. And now I'm going to turn the mic over.
Sure. Stephen Pampel, Director of IT for the Texas A&M University Libraries. As Kristen said, Jeremy and I have been working with this group on community-driven development for a little while now. And there were essentially, well, first of all, thanks for stealing my thunder. There are a couple of sessions tomorrow that will, I feel like, fit ball and socket in what's being discussed here today, and that this is a great way to surface community development priorities. But then what do we do with that? The community-driven development process is attempting to address that second question, that last bullet there. How do we close that loop? So I would very much encourage you to attend those sessions tomorrow. There's an informative session first, kind of giving the overview for it and what the kind of the plan is, the synthesis of the proposals that have been submitted thus far. And then the second part of it's a workshop of how do we actually move forward with this. So Jeremy, do you want to say anything else or? All right.
We have a comment from chat. One of the things that roadmaps do well is succinctly outline planned features in a timeline format that non-experts can read. The dashboard provides a lot of detailed information, but it's not user-friendly for the average librarian who wants to see what's in the pipeline for the next year and so on. Are there plans to create a simplified, non-technical roadmap? I think that that's a good suggestion. And I think, so there's two different things here. I think that the roadmap, we expect to persist in some form, and the dashboard, which communicates priorities, will persist in some form, and we might have opportunities to tie them together. What I'm hearing from this commenter, whose name is hidden, Chris Ann, is that we need kind of an executive summary or something at a high level to include with this. And that seems like a good target maybe for that biannual distribution, to include like a quick summary of what we're hearing from SIGs, but also maybe if there have been any updates to the roadmap.
Yeah, I would say that is the idea behind the PC's roadmap page. The challenge that the PC has had with that page, I think, is finding the right level and getting information from the POs and the teams that's really going to be useful, because saying like enhancements is not useful. I mean, it's general, but what's the level of detail to get? And so I was actually, when I was working on the updates, one of the things that I found very helpful was what people had put in the SIG reports. Now, if the SIG reports are shifting, to quarterly, maybe that could be part of it too, because I think what the SIGs are talking about, like the people who are in that area, and if they're going to have a deep discussion around, how to get history notes into purchase orders or other areas, or how to change the way things are indexed, or how to update some search functionality to make it look easier. That's a sort of non-technical way that we can highlight, I think, through the PC, those types of things. But it is like keeping this at the right level, keeping it up to date. That's something that I think we try, and we still need to strive further to get it better updated.
Sharon and then Lucy. Thank you, Kristen.
Thanks. I'm Sharon Marcus. I'm a library systems analyst at Cornell University and also FOLIO reporting SIG co-convener, along with my partner in crime, Scott Perry from University of Chicago. So I want to thank the PC for putting this community priorities dashboard together. I think it's fantastic. And as a SIG convener, it is sometimes difficult to understand what the priorities are in your community. What the community priorities dashboard did was it gave us a structure to come back to the FOLIO reporting SIG and to say, okay, we're being asked to identify our priorities. Let's talk about that. And it drove the discussion for about 3 meetings. because we continued to bring it up, and it helped us to identify what those priorities were and focus on them more. I think it's also important to say that there are groups in this project that have not been doing development. People capture development tasks and goals in different ways. We have been doing ours as issues in GitHub and have a little bit of development work in Jira. We're making the shift to do that. But because of that, sometimes, our priorities are not seen or understood. And so I think having the community priorities dashboard is a really important step to bring in groups that are working really hard in their realms so that they can, get aligned with how do we get priorities seen and heard, and also so that the rest of the community can understand what they are working on. So I really appreciate that effort. So I also think that it's just fantastic as a SIG convener to have a structure for working with our folks on this very important work. It's probably the most important work that we do, other than providing fabulous reporting services. So I'm all on board, and I would say just keep doing it. And I have other more specific stuff that I'll bug you with later.
Thank you. We welcome it. Here, can you hand it to Lucy?
Yeah, I know we're almost out of time. I'll make this super quick. So Lucy Harrison, Executive Director of Galileo and co-convener of the Consortia SIG, along with Vivian, who already spoke. Just one sort of, I guess, philosophical thing. You said, all of the priorities need to be linked to a, UX prod, to a ticket. In some cases, the priority might be a little bit more strategic, right? So if I suspect one of the priorities for Galileo might be something like more granularity of permissions, right? Which may go across multiple areas and multiple apps and multiple things. How do we surface sort of that higher level priority without going in and sort of tagging every single little ticket that might have something to do with that?
So I feel like that type of thing is what our app interaction / cross app SIG is designed for. I will say it is a challenge because one of the things that SIG has been working on is like consistency in how search works across FOLIO. And it sounded really easy when we kind of put it out there. We're like, all this like trailing white spaces and this weird stuff. And why is sometimes a wild card like this and sometimes a wild card like that? The hard part is converting that to something that's actionable. Because like when it comes to development work, we get questions like, well, you need to tell us what we need to change here. But I do think that that's a place for that type of sort of across the board priority. And I think that SIG could help. And I see behind you, Harry has his hand. So let me.
So I think this is great. This is fantastic. Oh, sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Harry Kaplanian, and I'm with EBSCO, and I'm responsible for product management for FOLIO at EBSCO. And so I think this is great. This is a huge stepping off point to other things that we can start to do. And I think some areas that we should really think about, from the perspective of a SIG, what should a SIG actually be doing on a day-to-day, week-to-week, monthly basis? And, for me personally, I can think of three things, right? One of them, maintain your priorities. Make sure the SIG always knows what ideally we should and could be working on. The other one is for the SIG to continue to work with product owners on existing projects that are in play, as well as any other future projects that directly apply to that SIG. But then I think the third one is, now that you know your priorities, it's really kind of critical now to start to define in more detail, what's the actual problem that needs to be solved? What are the things that actually have to happen to solve that problem? And as we start to gain that level of detail, all of a sudden, I've got folks on my team, I'm going to be working on sorting in this particular area. You know what? There's a priority on sorting as well, and looking at it and the details of it it's actually not going to take much effort for me to include that in our development, which means it just gets done, which would be great, right? But there's also other cases as well. If you've got those details, now there's an opportunity for maybe some like-minded libraries to get together and start to think about, hey, can we get estimates on this? How much would it actually cost to build it? If it's not currently on, any team's roadmap in terms of what needs to be delivered, maybe we can take a look, get some estimates. Maybe we can pull together the funding or the developers or whatever may be needed to actually get it built. And so there's just things start to happen because we have this. And I just wanted to say that. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Harry. And before we wrap up, I wanted to answer one piece of what you said, Lucy, which is this has been a question about whether things have to be in UX prod. I think it's something we need to continue talking about. You are not the first to raise this problem. And I think a good goal for us might be, and I need to talk to the PC, we need to make this decision together, but there might be a scenario where we invite SIGs to go ahead and add that broad priority. And then through conversation, like when you come to the PC to talk about your priorities, you connect with others. Kristen's not actually on the PC anymore, but we'll talk to two people on the PC who might be able to help you identify UX prods that exist. That's a big part of this too. We've got some duplication happening in UX prod. Might be able to identify other groups you should be talking to. Might immediately, be able to identify dependencies or potential opportunities. So maybe the end point is a UX prod. I do think that in order for the development to happen, in order for Harry to find the ticket, it's got to be in UX prod and it's got to have the use cases be fully addressed, but we want to help SIGs get there. So we'll talk about that internally.
So I think we are at time. It is 11:50 here in Kansas City. And so thank you very much for coming. And I encourage folks to talk to anybody on the PC. You can talk to me too, and I'll make sure that people on the PC know about it, so you don't have to worry about that. But thank you very much. And for those of you here, go enjoy some lunch down the hall. And those of you that are online, go have a break or enjoy some lunch in your location.